the way the community is structured back in Africa is not the same way that community is structured here. How do we integrate?
Anybody can correct a child who is doing the wrong thing. When a child is born, the child is brought up by the community, is raised by the community, corrected by the community.
Yeah. Let's not make that mistake that, the children will see what we do and copy. No, you have to make it an intention. You have to intentionally want to teach your children for them to be able to get used to that. Welcome to AfriSOTA. Today we have an interesting conversation lined up for you. It's all about the intricate challenges that African immigrants face when they move over to the United States with their families. Here to open up this conversation with me today is a brother who himself grew up in Africa, and today he's raising his own family here in Minnesota. The challenges, work, life, and all that comes in between is going to be discussed here today. How to raise those children without losing our cultural identity, without losing the values from Africa. So sit back. If you've already subscribed to this channel, thank you very much. If you've not subscribed, please hit that subscribe button, because that's how you help us, that's how you support us to make this video reach many more people. Like the video, share the video, and leave your comments below. Let us know what you want us to discuss about. But this is AfriSOTA Digital, and we are here for you. Welcome to this discussion. Today we want to talk about bridging worlds. We want to talk about African families and how they navigate integrating in this welcoming state, Minnesota. So I'll let my brother here introduce himself to you all, and then we'll take it up from there. So brother, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for taking the time to share this moment with us.
Thank you so much.
Remember that it's the doctor's advice.
Okay, doctor's advice, a glass of tea or something a day. So thank you, John, for having me. And to our audience, those watching, I'm called Walters Faye, and originally from Cameroon. I've been in Minnesota now for about 8 years. And I would say Minnesota is home away from home. And it's a pleasure trying to share our experiences and opinions with the public. And before we start, I just want to throw this out there. What we are sharing here, I'll be sharing my personal experiences and opinions, which may not exactly be what other people have had as experiences, but may guide or motivate some or reorientate some other person as they navigate the same path that we've been through.
Great. So thank you very much, Brother Walters, your host, John Ewu. So sit back today as we hear our opinion, and maybe what we'll share here today might inspire you. Maybe it resonates with your story, with your journey as an African immigrant in Minnesota. Feel free to comment below. Make sure you can add your comments below. Like this video, share this video, subscribe to this channel. The very first thing I would like us to discuss about is, let's talk about the foundations of family life in Africa. I know many African families that have moved over here to Minnesota. In one way or the other, they face certain challenges because of the change in culture, change in systems. But I think those challenges come to play because the very foundations that the African family has back in Africa are very different from what we have here in Minnesota. And based on those foundations, we are bound to face some challenges when we come over here to the United States and try to integrate.
Definitely.
So maybe you have some experiences growing up as a child in your youthful age in Africa. How was that family foundation for you?
So thanks for that topic, that first point of discussion. I would say the definition of family varies slightly as we move from one community to another. And a lot of us growing back in Africa, we have that notion of a family being an entire community, not just a nuclear family of parents and their own kids, but a child who is born belongs to an entire community.
That's true.
And one key thing, just taking right from that early stages of infancy, even when a woman is pregnant, before that baby is born, the community is waiting to celebrate with when the baby is actually born. And we have events, we have naming ceremonies, we have what we call born house, people coming to actually bathe the baby, clothe the baby, feed the baby, and things like that. As opposed to the Western system what we experience here, when people start celebrating before the baby is born with what we call baby shower.
Baby shower. In some African societies also, they have baby showers. Like in East Africa, they have a lot of this baby shower thing going on. And people do it in huge ways. Some do, what do they call it even? Some do chopper shower. You know, they do it from the chopper and all this kind of thing. It's a huge ceremony that some people in Africa still embrace, which is fine. But from where we come, it's not a very common thing.
Yeah, from my own side of the West African culture, we celebrate the baby when the baby is born. And then when that baby is born, the community comes to celebrate and name that child. And the child grows up to be a child of the community. Anybody can correct a child who is doing the wrong thing. When a child is born, the child is brought up by the community, is raised by the community, corrected by the community. When you see a child doing something, a neighbor, an elderly person, a senior person in the community can scold that child, can correct that child, and can even report the child to the parents.
Or to authorities. Like teachers in school.
Because you want that community to be free of vices and things that are not good. So that correction, that family upbringing, it doesn't limit itself to a nuclear family. It goes to the extended family, the neighborhood, and the village as a whole. As opposed to my experience moving over to the United States, where focus is more on the nuclear family, and with a lot of commitments or obligations tied to parents that work and having to pay bills and take care of their kids. And a lot of that interaction is not there. Kids tend to maybe stay more at home. Parents need to create time, make appointments to take their kids to go meet with their other peers to play. Creating opportunities for kids, for people to come together, it's a bit scarce. But back home in Africa, kids just need to step out in the neighborhood, and they can have fun all day. And even if they are playing in the neighbor's house, the parent prepares food, they all go in and eat as a community.
That's it.
But back over this way, you need to have an eye on your own child, because whatever you say against someone else's kid could be misinterpreted and could be used against you. So everybody just takes their distance, tries to respect their boundaries. So that's one thing I would say was kind of like the main first cultural difference, which I have to overcome, and trying to instill that into my own kids.
That's it.
To find a balance, maintaining our cultural identity while blending well in the society, in the community in which we are raising them.
So personally, I know when we were growing up, playing things like football, we used to play rainbow, I'm not sure if you, but you know about it. We used to, and we never used to have the fancy ball that children will have these days. No, sometimes we'll wrap paper bags and tie them with ropes, and that becomes our ball. Sometimes we'll just use the orange. The orange is what we play. And we put the one bottle there, we put another bottle here, and we play within this gap. If you hit that bottle down or hit this bottle down, it's considered a goal. And when you come outside to play, you find a host of other children just playing, This is something which is very different when you come here. Yes, you can have kids playing around, You can have one or two neighbors have their kids playing around, but it is not as common as you find it in Africa.
Definitely.
And that interaction amongst children in Africa, that play alone, it's where this foundation of community begins. Because as these children play with each other, they begin to know each other. They begin to know their neighbors. They begin to know who is next to me. And not just knowing them, each person begins to take part in the life and the growth of the other person. So much so that if I notice that Walter's here is saying even bad words in school, it is my responsibility to tell the teacher Walters was saying bad words when we were walking to school, or I come home and I will tell him, I will report you to your parents that you are using bad words. Those are the kind of interactions that we used to have, and those formed that basis of community, that basis of togetherness. And there's that saying in Africa that it takes a village
to raise a child.
To raise a child, Yeah. And we also say, if you want to go fast, you go alone. But mind you, if you want to go far, you go with people. So I think it's a very important thing. Community. That is one of the basic foundations that we grew up with in Africa. And of course, we find it very challenging here in the Western world. And there's nothing wrong with it. We're not trying to say which is best, which is bad, which is good. No. We're just speaking out our experiences.
Sharing ideas to find a common ground.
Now, when we move over to Western countries and realize that, the way the community is structured back in Africa is not the same way that community is structured here. How do we integrate to make sure that we keep the identity of our cultures as Africans and still interact in this community with the set communal principles that exist? This is where parents find it very challenging for their children.
Definitely.
Yeah,
if I could come in there, I would say the big challenge there is just being able to come up with that conducive environment for that community growth. Getting that conducive environment to promote that community growth is a big challenge, because many of our parents here, they're struggling between jobs, and then the nuclear nature of individualism makes it such that kids don't easily have the opportunity to go out and play with others unless you create the time to take them over.
Mm-hmm.
And picking up from one of your previous episodes, we now have kids who are raised by the TV. Just say a parent who has, maybe they are coming up with their first child, or even a couple of children. When they are busy and the child is crying and needing attention, the best way to keep that child quiet is to give them a phone, a tablet, or put on some TV programs. Again, those programs can be quite educative, but they tend to be addictive. And that child now spends more time on those electronics and the programs rather than interacting with others, because, by the way, the opportunities are scarce. So one thing that I truly admire for most of our communities, African cultures, communities that are present here in Minnesota, is the concept of getting together. We have tribal meetings from getting together, maybe on a monthly basis. And a good number of them actually rotate the way they host from one house to another. Let us know where our brother lives. Let's know where our sister lives. And when they get together, they always make sure the kids are present, so that there's that opportunity to transmit some of those cultural values to the kids and let the kids play with each other. So there are so many facets to this. We'll be looking at them as we evolve, but that's just one way of trying to bring them together.
Yeah.
Or if I know that John's kids will be at home at this hour on this day, I can drop my kids, let them play with your kids, so that they continue to nurture that spirit. And we have the concept of sleepover, which we are also copying here, but
it can help.
So we are just looking for that common ground again, what we can pick from both cultures and try to put together to help.
You mentioned something about tribal meetings. Some of these tribal meetings have become a place where people just go and drink and discuss about finances, monthly dues, discuss about projects that they want to execute back home. And I can tell you for sure, for some of these tribal meetings, they don't even let the kids sit with the parents. They don't let the kids sit there. The kids come and they are sitting somewhere in the living room watching TV.
Again,
Again,
what we are
back
trying
to
to
it.
avoid.
Or all of them have their gadgets. One thing that I believe that Africans can use as an advantage, you've mentioned too. These tribal meetings should be a place where we take advantage to hand down culture
Definitely.
to these children. So instead of coming to the meeting and sending the children to sit upstairs so that they don't disturb us when we're discussing
important things.
bring the children in these meetings and then have in your agenda of that meeting a moment when it is culture.
Yeah.
You teach the children. This is, even if it's simple things like how to count from 1 to 10, how to say good morning, how to say how are you,
Yeah.
even if it's simple things, teach them the culture. We all come from a society where we come from a society where every tribe has a story behind it. These are simple things that we can do in our meetings to transmit that knowledge to our children. So instead of sending children to one room for them to go and play and watch TV and laugh and shout and be on their phones, those children will actually be in the meeting. And we are going to start educating the children about the culture. We're going to start teaching the children even societal issues. Because some of these things, they don't have an opportunity to learn them in school. We will take upon ourselves to train our children, to teach them some of these things during those meetings. You talked about play dates. Just visiting is not, it should not be something that we have to program. And again, it comes from that culture where, you have to tell me you are coming for me to be at home for me. Look, you can only work 16 hours in a day. And 16 hours if you are doing double shifts.
Double shifts, yeah.
If you're doing double shifts, you can only work 16 hours. A lot of people say, there's no time. We definitely have time in America.
It's about how you manage the time.
It's how we manage it. Like, visit families. Let these children interact. There can be a moment where you say, okay, your brothers will be coming. They're coming over so you guys can play. Or we are going to this park where we will meet with your brothers and sisters so that you guys can play. As we leave the house, nobody will take their phone.
Yes.
Parents will be there with you. Your brothers, your sisters will be there with you. You don't need your phone to call anybody. So we will go out, we'll meet with this family, and you'll have an opportunity to play with your friends, and shut them out of the phone for that moment. Let them have the experience of playing.
Yeah, and that's one thing I've told my kids when we are leaving the house. Sometimes it's like, we are going somewhere. Maybe it's a 40 minutes, an hour drive or 30 minutes drive. It's like, we'll be bored in the car. Can we take our gadgets? Can we take our tablets, our iPads? I'm like, no. You are going to meet other kids. You are going to play. You are going to interact. You don't need to hold those gadgets. Because when you go there, you spend your time again playing on those same tablets that you are using at home.
Mm-hmm.
So without those things, you are forced to interact and play with other kids where you are going.
Mm-hmm.
And they've understood that. So when we are going somewhere, they don't carry those gadgets. And then responding to one of your points too about those are tribal meetings where we are discussing important stuff and then leaving the kids in one room
to play.
Many of those groups are gradually realizing that mistake. So I think in the Mendang meeting and the Bali meeting, they have what we call Kids Corner. They may not be doing it every month, but they are trying to push it through so that at least once a year before they are coming to an annual event like a Christmas party or something, the kids have something to present that they've picked out throughout the year. So a time that they are learning, they're teaching them, how do you greet someone? how do you address someone?
Mm-hmm.
How do you even just approaching someone respectfully?
Yeah.
And that's one thing we've even been teaching our kids, just that aspect of respect. But when they come back from school, the teachers say, oh, the children are always so nice, so polite, so respectful. Just that appreciative spirit. Somebody gives you something or does a gesture, they say thank you. You go in and see somebody, good morning, hi. Say they're always so nice, so polite, so respectful. I'm not saying they're the best, but they are picking some of those values and it's making a difference.
And I'll tell you, they're not picking. You are training them. Because let's not make that mistake that, oh, the children will see what we do and copy. No, you have to make it an intention. You have to intentionally want to teach your children for them to be able to get used to that.
Definitely.
Because the society does not end with us. Take, for instance, how many hours do you have to spend with your children at home, especially for parents who don't have remote jobs? Let's say you all are back-to-back, shift. Once the child starts getting to the age of going to school, how many hours can you spend with that child just to monitor the child do her thing or his thing? In Africa, there's the concept of house help. It is a concept which provides support to the family, but some people have abused that and their children are literally being raised by these house helps.
Not to interrupt you there.
Yeah.
We now have kids raised by house help, as we have kids in America raised by
electronics. You see, so it has to be an intentional thing, because when you decide you want to have children, it's a decision you've made. You have to plan what you want to do to pass on values to those children. It doesn't get passed on. Your values cannot be passed on to your children by your house help. Your values cannot be passed on to your children by gadgets. It's not possible. And you cannot just expect that process to be a passive process that the children are picking it up. No.
Definitely.
It's an intentional action. You plan that they must cultivate these values. And that is what we're talking about. That foundation, very important, very necessary.
Yeah, and we've taught our kids just that aspect of respect. You see somebody older than you, it's a normal thing. I had that culture shock here when I first visited the United States in 2010. That was like 13 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I'll see somebody who is in his 80s comes to teach me something or comes to visit, and we're calling him by name, Jim. Hey, Jim, how are you? Hi, Tom. Mm-hmm. How, Mary? I was like, oh, don't we have any respect for age, for seniors in this place? It's like, oh, I prefer you address me that way. I'm like, well, in my culture, it's not the way we address. We need to give some respect to seniors. So I will at least address you as Mr. if you don't mind. Some will say, okay, that's fine. And others was like, no, just to call me Tom.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I respect your wish, but I'm not comfortable. And we've taught our kids until sometimes they see our neighbors and they address him like, hey, Mr. Steve, hi, Mr. Jeff. It's like, oh, you're calling me Mr.
Yeah.
Just that aspect of giving respect. You don't address people as if they're your mates.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And this is it. These are core values. So as simple things as those, cultivate them, intentionally transfer them over to your children. You see a 5-year-old kid addressing an 80-year-old person by their name.
Yeah.
Simple things like those. We're not saying that respect is tied to that
Just
title.
that title.
Yeah. But when you call somebody brother, Mr., there is a way that you approach them also, even in conversation. There's a way that, so let's not confuse ourselves in the process and fail to hand down very important values to our children.
And just adding to that, like a lot of us, we just try to, even within our African context, a senior person, a child will address a senior and a more elderly person as uncle, auntie. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean that they are related in any way, but it's still part of that respect. Mm-hmm. And when you see that person and you call him uncle, aunt, even though you're not related,
Yeah.
there's a tendency for you to obey and respect some guidance that comes from that person than if you were just calling that person by their name.
Switch over to America. We have a shift culture. You have to get the wheels turning. You have to do the work. We're not saying you come here now and decide to take your children and not work and all that.
No.
We have
You have to pay the bills.
Yeah, you have to pay the bills. And then there are other things in this culture which are equally worth emulating. They are very good values, like respect for your children is also something which is important. Respect for their rights is also something very important.
Yes.
Unfortunately, most of us in Africa don't value that part so much. But when you come over to the US, you realize that the respect for the child's right is a very, very strong thing here. You can't leave your children by themselves until they're what age again?
There should be somebody at least 13 and above before you even step out of the house. But legally, it should be 16 years even.
So like we're talking about leaving them by themselves or letting them go somewhere by themselves. These are things that they're fine. Why? Because the society has made it to be so. There is a lot of insecurity out there. You have people who are just there to snatch children, to kidnap children for reasons that are best known to them. You have a lot of mental health issues around. So when you come here, don't insist that no, in Africa at 7 you can go, you do this, I can leave you at home. No, if you do that, you get yourself in trouble. So there are some good values here that you must respect because of what the society dictates. So those foundational things, very important. Do not forget to transmit them over to your kids. Do not forget to be intentional about it.